Greetings, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to the third week in what I have coined Activate April. And so far in April, you have been working to let go of an old grounded ego and surrender to a winged ego. This week, you not only surrender, but you are tested to see if you can stay the course. From my smartphone to yours, keep streaming for your weekly Namaste Today. Welcome to Namaste Today, a spiritual way to start your day. I'm your host and spiritual life coach, Sensei Christopher Witecki. Welcome back, dear friend. Namaste. Well, times are interesting, aren't they, my friend? We are birthing a new ego. And if you want to know the last time the Earth birthed a new ego like this, it was right before World War II. Not kidding. And that was the last time humankind had the choice between warfare and grounded old ego consciousness from the old world and the possibility of creating the new ego consciousness in a new world. And I think all of us know how that turned out. So this week, you are in an opportunity to learn from spiritual history and upgrade to what I call a winged ego. An ego that is not triggered by fight or flight syndrome, but an ego that's designed to thrive versus always being afraid of survival. So in this week's show, we're going to talk about how this upcoming week, in my opinion, is a test of this new character. I'm going to talk about how you'll be tested, and I'll talk about the consciousness that is involved. Then later in our tea time, we're going to talk about all 12 zodiac signs and where they are launching a new winged ego and where they're taking new control over their life. But first, let's take a look at the week's moods and your zodiac weather. This zodiac weather is for Monday, April 16th to Friday, April 20th, 2018. Looking at your 5-day moodcast. The first 3 days of the week are sunny, including a love fest, but the second 2 days, cloudy and strange. Let's drill down. On Monday, it's sunny and professional. Step 26 rules the day, and with the moon in Taurus and Mercury direct, you're ready to go out and create. On Tuesday, it's sunny and strong as it's Love Fest Day. Step 27 rules the day, and a moon in Taurus seals your fate. On Wednesday, it's sunny and shifting. The sun crosses Uranus, and you are holding space for a new winged ego, despite your mind maybe trying to talk you out of it. On Thursday, it's cloudy, irritable, with a chance of thunderstorms. Step 29 rules the day, and your mind is either your enemy or your friend. And then on Friday, it's cloudy and weird. Step 0 Taurus rules the day, and the moon in Cancer makes us all a little moody. Well, looking at the week ahead, it is really a test of your character on several fronts. I'm going to walk you through the week and talk about what influences are hitting you most. Taking a sneak peek at the upcoming week, I believe the collective consciousness will experience a final test of character. Now, I spoke to this in the open of the show. Uranus has been in Aries since 2012. What that basically means is the universe has come to a point where it's time to innovate the human ego. And we have been looking to innovate our ego since 2012. Uranus moves into Taurus in May, which basically signifies Uranus is done. This is as much as Uranus can do for 89 years. Okay? So the last time Uranus was in Aries was just before World War II. I believe it entered into Taurus in 1937 or 38, if I'm not mistaken. And if I'm not mistaken, that was also the time when Hitler decided to rearm Germany, right when Uranus went into Taurus. Now, what's interesting about this to me is I'm seeing history repeat itself all over again. Of course, back in the World War II era, we were humans that were acting very much like monkeys, and we felt that throwing shit at each other and beating each other up with rocks and sticks and guns and bombs was the way for us to deal with each other as a global consciousness. And that was as much as the evolution was. So I think the evolution of the human ego back in World War II was kind of more of the old ego, more of the grounded ego. So we got weapons that were faster, smarter, blew things up bigger. We just got more superlative at that time with our collective consciousness as far as what an ego is here to do. And of course, the World War II, Uranus and Aries, so the pre-Uranus and Aries to World War II, of course, it was all centered around survival. In fact, humankind literally came to the core of worrying about their survival once the atom bomb was introduced. At that point, we actually questioned whether or not we would destroy ourselves. So I look at that as the last oomph of the old ego, the grounded ego, the survival ego, the monkey ego, okay, that we have jumped into as spirits. And here we are, 89 years later. Uranus is about to wrap up its tour in Aries. And once again, human beings are being faced with the question of, what is this ego used for anyways, as human beings? Are we supposed to be using this ego for survival? Is survival even really an issue now with science and medicine and food and all this stuff? Why is survival still an issue? That's an interesting question. And what are we going to do with this ego power? Now, interestingly enough, back in World War II, if you kind of analyze it, there was a bunch of egos that were all basically fighting for world power. We had Mussolini in Italy. We had Franklin Delano Roosevelt, this big ego that got us through the Depression in the United States. We had Stalin in Russia, another big ego that basically inherited the Soviet Revolution and the power of it. We had, of course, who can forget Hitler, okay, which obviously was an egomaniac, pumped up on methamphetamines, as it turns out. And then we also had Emperor Hirohito in Japan. So we had all these egos that were basically all playing the world chess game for power, and they were doing it along the old power game, which is smarter, faster, bigger, blow things up more, right? Superlatives. My dad is better than your dad. My truck is bigger than your truck. That sort of thing. Here we are, the full Uranus cycle later, and now I'm interested to see that we have a bunch of egos once again playing for power on the earth. We have, of course, President Putin, who has replaced Stalin, right? Like, maybe a nicer Stalin, but that's what he inherited. We have President Trump, who has inherited Franklin Delano Roosevelt's power. We have Bashar al-Assad, who is basically being created as the new enemy. So whether or not he's guilty or innocent, they're certainly painting him as a Hitler, right? It's the same thing, like gassing his own people, just like gassing the Jewish population, right? So we have this same kind of theme, except now it's all being pointed to this Arab. We have Angela Merkel, who is now a big force for Germany. She's replaced Hitler, but she's now still one of the big headliners. And we have Theresa May, who actually, I didn't even mention Winston Churchill as another ego of World War II. So here we have it, all these new egos in play. And the question is, what are we going to do with our ego? Are we going to continue to bomb the shit out of people, beat people up on the playground, put economic sanctions on them so they're worried about starving, putting people into the fear of survival, or are we going to evolve? That's the question. And believe it or not, you may be at home feeling powerless, but you have all the power. Because it is the human being's reaction at home that matters most. Do you know why the United States did not enter into World War II until Pearl Harbor was bombed? It was because the general consensus of the United States population was they want nothing to do with Hitler, they want nothing to do with that war. And so FDR had to wait until we were literally attacked before he could talk us into the war. The point is, you at home have the power. That is the proof right there. And the question is, are you going to launch a new winged ego this week, one that wants power under different terms, or are you going to fall susceptible to the world fear-mongering and the old ego, grounded ego style? That's the question. And at this moment, Mercury is direct. So we're all finally thinking straight after 3 weeks of mental retrograde. And that's what we've been. We've been mentally retrograded for almost 3 weeks now. Now, that said, down on a personal level, there's this week so much I think is going to go down, so to speak. So many of these choices are going to be made. And again, I think your reaction on Facebook, your reaction to your neighbors, how you respond has a power, a sphere of influence. So don't think for 1 second with the old ego that you amount to nothing. The winged ego is we are all one. We all have like a butterfly effect on the world, and every flap of every butterfly's wings matters as far as I'm concerned. And in this coming week, we have some major shifts. Now, first of all, your heart will be tested. That's the biggest thing. Your heart consciousness will be tested as to where your heart is behind. Is your heart behind the grounded ego that wants to fight and wants to continue the old way of throwing shit and beating people up on the playground? Is that what your heart is into? Or are you into rising above it, flying above it, rising above this old ego, looking at it from a win-win perspective? By the way, I mean, that's another way you can divide the winged ego from the grounded ego. The grounded ego is a win-lose scenario. Someone has to lose. The winged ego is a win-win scenario. Both parties win. And God consciousness is creative enough. No matter how much you think there's not a solution, I'll bet everything I own that there is in every single case. So your heart has to choose this week. And part of this growth is emotional, because your emotions, your heart still may be hurt by all the times you lost. Your heart may still be having grudges about the one that got away. So the only way to fly is to let go of that pain and call it a day. Put up a white flag and surrender. Admit that in that cycle, you failed. Just like we have to admit, I think in World War II that we failed. They call it a triumph. From what I hear, we didn't even need to drop the A-bomb. We just wanted to see what would happen. So I don't look at anything in World War II as a success whatsoever. I'm ashamed at the whole world's population and what the decisions were, frankly, as a human. I don't think there's any win scenario. So your heart has to choose, and that means you have to accept that you lost this battle to win not even this war. Like the idea that's to win a war, that doesn't even apply to the winged ego, in my opinion. Now this heart transformation, really we start the week on Sunday morning with the new moon, and technically you commit on Monday. I'm committed, I'm the new winged ego. But that's, of course, before you found out this, found out that, and found out that. And that's what I'm expecting to happen. I'm expecting a whole bunch of weird news. Mercury is direct. Our mind now, our mental mind is moving forward. Our mental mind is now clear. And so a lot of things happen. We've been sitting back in a mental retrograde for 3 weeks, and we haven't been able to get clear on anything. So as soon as clarity comes, whatever your heart was invested in on Monday, it gets tested. And I think that's what this whole week is. It's a final test of your character. What does that mean in your own personal life? It means the parts of your life that want to keep life at war might strike. It means the parts of your life where you are always in conflict, that person may try to be in conflict again, especially if they're asleep, especially if they don't watch any shows like mine or other light walkers who are trying to help wake up the population. So a lot of people, even if you love them, even if they love you, their old ego doesn't want to die. It might strike. That's the test of your new winged ego, is how you respond to that strike. All right? And as I tape this, right now, the UN is deciding how it wants to respond to the gas attack in Syria, and we're deciding right now, and I'm taping in a retrograde, so we'll see how it turns out. I'll be watching with you, popcorn. If the world leaders are going to choose the old path or the new path, all right? So the heart has to choose, and the heart will be tested. The mind, your mental mind, your logical mental mind, like I said, has been retrograde for 3 weeks. Our mind has been retrograde. Our mind has been rethinking. Our mind has been recapping. This week, the mind only is in 2 steps. Step 4 on Monday, and then step 5 on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So there's literally 4 days where you're making up your mind. And I just want to keep that clear, that maybe you're very clear on the new winged ego, but it's your smart-ass mind that keeps talking you back and going back and replaying old. So the mind might be the state of awareness that needs to get it together. And I think Tuesday through Friday, the mind is literally being reprogrammed because it's at the Grandmaster step of 5. And 5 is I think. Now our action energy, our ego energy, our action energy right now for the whole world and for individuals is tied up with control. And not only is it tied up with control, but Mars and Black Lilith conjoin all week long. What that means is Each individual on earth must face their fears of taking control of their life all week long. Whatever your fears are. So if your fear is going to the dentist, you better go. You know what I mean? Like if your fear is, becoming a documented resident because of the craziness around citizenship, you better solve that. Whatever your fear is about your power and control, this is also part of the conscious test this week as Mars conjoins Black Lilith. And Mars moves, our ego conscious moves from step 16, and then it moves to step 17, which means we make a decision. So our action energy will make a decision about how we control. And on the global scale, that's probably a decision of how we respond to this whole thing or how we respond next. On a personal level, it's probably a decision of how you respond to. Keep in mind, the understory there is how you're controlling. Are you controlling by hitting kids on the playground? Are you controlling by shame? Are you controlling by a win-lose situation? Or are you controlling with a win-win situation? Is that what your consciousness is most concerned about? And the whole time, whatever the right way is, the way you know in your heart you ought to do it, it will probably for some reason scare the shift out of you. And that will be where the personal consciousness is. Now, my advice is, you take all that ego, tough, rough and tough kind of energy, and you nurture yourself. You face your fears. Instead of using this energy to act out and create a loser in the outer world, rechannel that energy to create a winner in the inner world, which means you'll be your own hero, you'll stand by your own side, you don't need to pick a fight. Your job is to be there for you. And I think that's part of the winged ego's posture too. But I do think at a global scale, it might be a bit of a scary week because the whole world is likely going to face its fears. And I'm sure its fears go back to World War II. Okay? Like, I'm sure our fears go back to the last time we saw this happen. The last time we saw the world unite over an evil access and whatnot. And isn't it funny now that there's still weapons of mass destruction, only this time we've actually seen it and have YouTube video, right? It's very, very cyclical. The last thing I want to bring up before I dive into each of the 12 signs has to do with our control consciousness, how we control. Saturn has been direct in Capricorn since December 20th. Saturn goes retrograde this month on Wednesday night, which means the universe has at that point introduced you to all of the old control games that you used to play. So you have seen that you are a manipulator. You have seen that you're an emotional manipulator. You've seen that you've been manipulated emotionally. You've seen that you hit kids on the playground. You've seen that you lie on the test. Whatever areas that you were cheating yourself or the world for your control, Saturn or our control consciousness has come to a point where you now know better. And what's interesting is as we launch this new winged ego, allegedly, some of us are, some of us aren't. I'll know what side of the picket lines you are based on that. But as we launch this new winged ego, the universe is saying, okay, I've taught you everything about corruption, and now let's see how you do. So we go through a test now with Saturn retrograde. I meant to write down when Saturn goes direct again. Can't remember off the top of my head. Can't remember. Someone can write it in. But we are basically going to be tested on what we have learned as far as the correct control, the incorrect control, starting from Tuesday for about 6 months or so is usually how it lasts. So this week is a final test of your character. And in my opinion, you're going to be focused on two things, the winged ego and how you control. So with that great introduction, go steep yourself some tea, and let's have our weekly tea time. Hello, my friend, and welcome to our tea time. Today's tea time topic is new character, new powers. As I mentioned in the last dramatic segment, we are in a very powerful moment here in human history. We are at the opportunity to change our ways. And you can talk for hours and hours about how humanity has never gotten it. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, this is your option to get it. This is our window in history to wake up and do things differently. And no, the war is not lost. Why? Because we are deciding whether or not we want to go about it with war or not with war. That's the real core question. And that's the question that you are being asked to answer this week. And this war is not on a global scale for you. It's probably your war with your student loans, and your war with your ex-husband, and your war with your teenage bratty kids who don't appreciate you. This is where your war energetically on terror is, and this is where you have the option to opt out of the conflict. And much of this means that you have to focus your ego energy on creating harmony inside of yourself. So, to put it very, very simply, the win-lose ego, okay, always wants to make somebody else lose if you are feeling like a loser. I'll say it again. The win-lose ego always wants someone else to lose because misery loves company, and it's because you inside feel like a loser. And it might be that you feel like a loser with your student debt, you might feel like a loser at work, you might feel like a loser in your marriage. Somewhere your ego is judging yourself, and that's how the old grounded ego stays in business, is by this old Judeo-Christian guilt trip that you're not enough, which is all part of the old ego, that you're not strong enough, all part of the old ego, that you don't have enough money, old ego, enough power, old ego. All of it is judging yourself for not being good at the old ego, right? And it's like, hold on, who even said that was good, right? The option is with the win-win ego. How do we have the win-win ego? We have to feel like we're winning on the inside. And so instead of blaming the outer world for our unhappiness, let's take that war initiative and go to war with helping ourselves, okay? So this is kind of like, instead of sending an army, send the Red Cross. That's the difference. Instead of sending an army with war and fighting and fury and fire and 24-hour CNN coverage, we send Red Cross. We send light walkers. We send people into our own life, or we take our own ego energy into our own life and we make ourselves not feel like a loser before we even come to the table, whatever that is. And I argue that you have the power to not feel like a loser without anyone else's sign-off. That's a God-given right, that you can feel good onto yourself without anyone else. That's the whole reason we incarnate. In my opinion, up in whatever the higher heaven sphere is, we're all connected. No one has any privacy. No one can do anything alone. The whole point of coming down is this pretend privacy where we can focus on ourselves and not everyone in the universe. Okay? And I know we need to focus on other people in the universe, but remember, you were born first and then you met the rest of the world. So there's an order of operation that has to be done. You were born first, then you met the world that needs your help. So this week, it is a real shift in ego action priority. The heart is going to be tested. We start with step 26 with a commitment. Then we take action 27. Then we hold space 28. Then we're tested 29, and that's Thursday. So you're super tested. That means all the old enemies try war again. And then boom, we're in step 0. And step 0 will be really weird. That's Thursday night to Friday morning. So step 0, your heart will be in step 0. At the end of the week, you won't know who won. There'll be too much smoke. Okay, like you won't know who won. You won't know. It'll take a while for the results to get in. Okay, so be conscious of that. This week, your ego moves from step 16 to step 19. That means your ego begins on a spiritual desire, but then it also has to face any fears, and you have to make a commitment to the direction you're going. So you're going to have to commit to your response before you're very clear on whether or not the new ego is working or not. You have to be clear. In fact, it is what you choose to do as your response that technically defines the new ego this week. So your choices of action, that's where your real power is. You want a winged ego? Then respond like a winged ego. This week, as I said, our control consciousness will reach step 9, which means that everyone will pull some sort of throttle. Everyone will move forward with some sort of plan. It's a collective consciousness, so I wouldn't be surprised that what's going on in the world affects what's going on in your world. In other words, your choice to move or stay in a certain place or visit, maybe you had a vacation plan to Israel this summer and you're like, I don't know. like things change because of the world climate and the collective consciousness. And then as soon as they change, Saturn goes retrograde, we learn for 6 months whether or not that was appropriate. And then the biggest news, which I haven't mentioned in the earlier segment, is our integrity. Our integrity has been focused on spirit for a very long time. I should have looked up the date. Damn it, Mercury retrograde. But Chiron moves into Aries on Tuesday. That means that we move from lessons of spiritual integrity now to lessons of ego integrity. And we'll be focused on ego integrity lessons for some time. I think when my research, 2026 is when Chiron goes into Taurus. 2026, if I'm not mistaken. Note to self, write that shift down. So I want to talk about what this means for all 12 signs, where you need to take action, where your new ego is, where you must be focused. And when I say where, I mean whatever category I talk about today, that's where you need to be very focused on your action, what you actually do, okay? Of course, everything in your life is a symbol of you, and so it doesn't count to be nice at work and an ass at home, all right? But if I say work is where it counts, definitely don't screw up there, okay? The other area I'm going to talk about is this Mars-Black Lilith connection, which means where you are facing fears from your old ego. And keep in mind, your old ego is the part that's afraid. Your old ego still wants a job in the new world. Your old ego still wants to be a general and important, but tell that old ego to go retire in the Bahamas because there's a new ego being born today. And again, that comes down to the conscious behavior that you make. And then lastly, I will always, as of course, put up on the side here what sign I'm talking about. So you can fast forward if you're pressed for time because the world is such a crazy place. I'm just going to deliver the message and not be worried about how long or short it is. Okay. Aries. Aries, the purebreds of the zodiac, they are birthing literally a new character, 100% birthing a new character. That means for you, Aries, every action, home, work, privately in the shower, all of it counts. All of it is programming the new winged ego. How you respond to soft soap or bar soap, the whole 9 yards. I would look at the smallest actions as the most important actions. So our ego tends to go like, get married or not get married. Believe it or not, I think vegan or meat for tonight for dinner is far more powerful than get married or not get married. So be conscious of your smaller choices. You will be facing fears about your future. You must commit to a new future this week. And you must face your fears about how it could go wrong, or where it has gone wrong in the past, or where you've been outcast and not respected. So Aries will have to live the new them, and they will have to face fears about their future not turning into a disaster. But here's the thing, Aries. If your future is headed for disaster, that's the old ego. Clearly, the old ego is driving if you think the future is heading for disaster. Taurus, and I already feel this. Taurus is committing to a new soul mission. And I'm feeling this personally too. I'll just share. I have always been on a certain mission, but now that I see the world kind of starting to boil, I'm shifting what my spiritual mission is. I realize the time is now. And Tauruses are realizing that they have a calling that they were given before birth, and now is the time. The horns are sort of blowing. Taurus, it's time. In order to do that, you must face any fears about believing in yourself. So Tauruses have got to eat, smell, drink the Taurus juju. Okay, you got to know and believe and have no doubts if you're going to pull it off. So you will be tested with your fears about believing in yourself or not. And if you're bringing up the past as evidence, that's the old ego, Taurus. Gemini. Gemini are going to commit to a new social status, okay? So they're committing to where they belong in the world. They're going for a title. They're going for a rank. They're going for a personality. They're going for stardom. They're going, for a promotion. They're becoming a dad. They're becoming a mom. They're becoming divorced. They're becoming married. Social status is changing. Your behavior in the public is so important right now, Geminis. Where you will be tested is your fears of change. So Geminis like to live in their head. They're terrified of change. They like things to all be logical and add up to their data. They're not very good at facing the unknown, even though they're super smart and they'll probably figure it out anyways. So you must face your fears about changing your life and being in a different comfort zone for you to be able to triumph in this winged ego in the world. Cancer. Cancer are going to create a new future. So this is huge for Cancers because they thought they would retire with white picket fence and 2 children. But just think of all the Cancer moms in World War II that had to roll up their sleeves and go into the ricket factory, right? Like they became, like, I think that I can't remember the name of that portrait. Can't think of the name of that portrait right now. But that portrait to me is a portrait of a Cancer at work, you know. So Cancers are choosing what their future is. Their new winged ego is a different future, a different career, a different legacy. That means you're going to be known for different things, okay? To get there, you must face all fears about relationships, okay? That's your Achilles heel. Will I ever be married? Will this ever work out? Will da-da-da-da, okay? Cancers have put way too much power in their marriage and partnerships, completely forgotten about who they are on the inside. And so you must face any fears about being alone, being together, finding the one, all that. That's all old ego worry. When you thought your life was Little House on the Prairie, but it's not. The world is changing, and we need your consciousness and your conscious compassion in certain places. Frankly, Cancers probably will be the Red Cross, okay? So don't screw up any action about your career. Be very focused on career decisions and career moves this week, Cancer. Leos. Leos are moving forward with a new life purpose, so they're going to feel very renewed. The king of the jungle is going to realize what jungle it's supposed to be king or queen of, okay? And why it has meaning and purpose to them and why it's important to them. So their new winged ego comes with a purpose. It comes with a mission. And so they're going to understand what that mission is. However, they must face fears about changing their daily life. And you might go, what? Well, yeah, if you're just a king of the jungle laying around all day in the sun, hunting when you feel like it, having sex with 20 different female lions when you feel it. Of course the Leos don't want to change the reality. Of course, they're living probably in pampered comfort. They're going to be uncomfortable. So they have fears about how they're going to end up changing their daily life. But whatever your fears are, face it. Face it and move on. You do have a mission, Leo. Don't make any mistakes when it comes to your beliefs. So I would say this week, be in 100% alignment with your beliefs, even if it goes against the status quo and risks your reputation. That was good. Virgo. Virgo is basically transforming their life. And this is kind of similar to Leo's in the sense of, you know Virgos, they never change, right? Like, who are we kidding? They never change. It's always the same old Virgo. Not anymore, folks. I think we're going to see Virgos go through a transformation. They're going to finally get over certain comfort zones they have, okay? And they are going to, and this transformation will transform everything. Very hard to predict, but I bet every Virgo has a story. I bet every Virgo is changing it from some way. So because it's transformation, it could happen at home. It could happen with the kids. It could happen with work. It could happen with society. It could happen with where you live. It can happen anywhere. It's transformation. But in order to pull it off, you must face all fears, Virgo, that your heart won't get what it wants. And that's your fear. Your fear is that your heart won't get what it wants because your heart never gets what it wants. That's the old ego. The old ego's heart never gets what it wants. The new ego's heart, based on thriving and flying, gets everything it wants. It's kind of all or nothing for Virgos. So they're going to have to face fears about love. And if you're still hanging on to some love story, I got to tell you, every Virgo client I have brings up probably usually a Gemini that they are still hooked on. And I'm like, Virgo, let go of that Gemini. So if you have some love interest that hasn't panned out, it's press time. They're out of time. They'll have to catch you in the next life. Okay? Let's move on to some fun for you. Libras. Libras are basically coming up with a new self-mastery plan. So they have a new vision. Their new winged ego is a new way of treating self. See, Libras like to be distracted by worrying about other people's feelings and other relationships, and that's really like a little game, so they don't have to do their soul homework and they don't have to improve their relationship to themselves or their relationship to God or whatever. So they're actually, this new winged ego increases and replaces the relation to themselves. They become important. In order to get there, they must face their emotional fears. So a lot of Libras are riddled with fear. Why are they riddled with fear? Because they live in their mind and they think that their mind can extinguish the fear when fear is an emotion that must be addressed with nurturing and compassion and focus on the feelings. So you're really committing to your emotional fears that you have never cleared out or been strong for yourself for, and that's basically what keeps Libras from their self-mastery, is their emotional fears cripple them. Scorpio are their new winged ego comes with a whole new lifestyle. So you're going to see Scorpios changing jobs, changing wives, changing husbands, changing houses. I know a couple Scorpios buying their first house right now. Like, they are going to create a new life that represents the new them. And a lot of it is job, a lot of it is home and family changes and things like that. In order to get to that new lifestyle, Scorpios must face their fears in their head. So Scorpios are kind of like kind of like Libras. Scorpios have a ton of fear in their head. It allows them to get disheveled. It allows them to get defensive. It allows them to put the stinger up. And the truth is, you just have to face your fears in your head. If there's no evidence, if it's false evidence appearing real, dismiss it. You're the ruler of boundaries, for crying out loud. Make a boundary in your head and get rid of any fear in your head if there's no evidence. All right? It's that simple. So Scorpios are building a new life by facing the fears in their head. Sagittariuses are birthing a whole new adventure. So Sagittarius are planning to travel, planning to marry, planning to divorce. Like, their heart is lit up. It's time for a new adventure. It's time for a new mission. So they're super excited, and I'm excited for them. For them to face that mission, they have to face their fears about money and worthiness, how worthy they are. And they have all sorts of inner guilt trips and all kinds of stories about why they're not worth it or why they don't deserve it. And you have to face all your fears, Sag, about why you're worth or not worth the situation for you to go on to this new mission, okay? Capricorns. Capricorns are building a new emotional foundation. And this is pretty big. This kind of represents the whole world crisis issue. The whole world is fighting over resources very much for the same reason that Capricorn is fighting for resources, because emotionally they don't feel strong. They don't feel they're going to survive. And because you don't feel you're going to survive, that justifies certain behavior to over-aggressive ego consciousness to ensure that you survive. And the problem is not whether or not you're going to survive. There's food in the pantry. There's a job. You're paying taxes. The issue is you emotionally don't feel like you'll survive. So Capricorns must build a new winged ego that makes them feel secure whether the stock market is up or down. It cannot matter. And for them, they have to face their fears about change, believe it or not. A lot of Capricorns, their ego is all based on the fact that they've been the same forever, that they're a steady rock, that they're so stable. And so they've been afraid to making changes because they think that that's going to ruin their credibility in the world. Let me tell you something about the new world, Capricorn. You're only as credible as your last text message, okay? We have been forced into the now. And so your resume and what you've done in the past, no one will do the Google search. I'm sorry. They're going to only take you at face value now. So you might as well focus on feeling good and forget about the long resume of why you're entitled to be who you are energetically. So you must face fears of ego change to build an emotional foundation. That's how you launch the winged ego. And your control issues, of course, are your behavior, how you control your behavior. And boy, do Capricorns control their behavior. Aquarius. Aquariuses are launching a new vision, a new attitude, a complete new way of looking at things. You could say that this is probably the birth of the age of Aquarius. What I mean the birth of it, I mean every Aquarius on the planet is now having a new vision. That's probably the seed to the age of Aquarius right there. Of course, the Aquariuses will see it before anyone else. That's their job. That's why they're an Aquarius, right? But I think Aquariuses are going to start to see a new vision, a new world, a new possibility, a new win-win. They're going to see solutions in their life that other people wouldn't have seen. They're going to rise above before many people because they're going to intellectualize the ego shift way before the society actually does it. So Aquariuses are getting a new attitude, but in order to have it, they must face their fears. So Aquariuses are being called for a total rotor-rooter fear clear-out. This is like a fear colonic. Okay, like you have to get rid of every dark fear and every ghost. Again, I will say to you what I said to the Scorpios, false evidence appearing real. We've come to a point where if you can't show me a receipt that proves you should be afraid of that, you got to chuck it. And this all happens, of course, in your mind. It's probably what's keeping you from seeing the new day is the old fear and the hesitation. So Aquariuses will have a new attitude and a new vision on life because they face their biggest fears. And once they're fearless, I think we're on the path to freedom, by the way. And then finally, the Pisces. Pisces are going to be creating a new manifestation. So sit back and get some popcorn, folks. Every Pisces you know is about to come out with some sort of magical new golden egg. They're ready to manifest something big. It could be a book. It could be a child. It could be a job. It could be a miracle. It's a Pisces, okay? It could be anything under the sun. They're connected to spirit. So they're birthing a new productivity, a new manifestation. They're birthing a new goal for why they're on Earth and what to do with this physical reality. For them to get there, they must face their fears about society. Pisces are deadly afraid that people won't like them, or they'll be rejected, or they'll be hanged, or burned at the cross, or whatever, right? So Pisces have to face their fears about being who they are in the world. They have to be fearless about who they are in the world. They can't second guess who they are in the world. They must know in their heart that that is their calling, to be who they are, precisely where they are in the world. So Pisces' self-esteem will rise as they face fears about social rejection, or you could say fears of social success, one of the two. A lot of Pisces actually fear success because they're going to feel all that attention from the world on them, and they don't want that attention, so they're afraid of their success. I've seen Pisces on all sides of the scale. So Pisces, you are committing to a new self-worth by facing your fears about society. All right, my friends, that's a lot, is it not? But I think we're on the cusp of something super magical here. And I just want to say, I haven't said this year so far, but I have been teaching and preaching astrology on the internet for 12 years now. Full Jupiter return this year for me. And I'm really starting to say that we are awakening. I have this 12-year experience. We are awakening. We are seeing better. We do know better. We don't have the excuse of being ignorant. We don't have the excuse of being called weird anymore. The internet has allowed the ones who believe to come together, and it's really a matter of practicing what you preach at this point that will separate you from the rest. Now that Chiron is in Aries, it's not what you say, it's what you do. All right, couple of announcements. For one, I'm having another Love Fest celebration in Denver, Colorado at the Mercury Cafe. It'll be on May 20th, okay? And we encourage everyone to come together and meet us. This is really, we do some workshops on how to clean up the inner you, but we also are bringing together people who are like-minded. And as you know, with the world sort of kind of crumbling at the seams, there's never a better time now than for us to come together. And what we're supposed to do together, we're not sure yet. We just know we're supposed to come together. So I have people flying in for this into Denver. And if you are, put out an email to us at support@SeriousJoy. Let us know you're coming into town so that we can try to coordinate some extracurricular events. But we will be having this at Oneness Festival, Love Fest at 1 p.m. at Mercury Cafe on May 20th. I'd love to see you there. I also would love to see you on my personal Sensei service. You may think that I'm just trying to trump up a sale, but I spent almost 4 years developing this program to help people through troubled times. That's the whole point I built it. So there's no reason to do this alone. Don't let your old ego say that you have to do this fight on your own. It's nice to have people to walk in the light with. And Serious Joy brings not only the advice at the right time using your natal date of birth, but it also brings you a community of light every day. And we are facing every day together. So if you're interested, give it a try. Come to SeriousJoy.com. And then lastly, an invitation to our little club on the internet. I know Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg has gotten a lot of shift, but he did build technology that allows us to bring together. And in our group, we're doing good things. We're sharing our gifts with each other. We're selling our products to each other. We're informing each other of the truth. And you can be a part of a positive Facebook community by coming down to namastetoday.club. All right, my friend, good luck in this hour. I, for one, am excited for Taurus to come because it's my birthday coming around the corner, and I think this is going to be a fabulous Taurus year. We got Uranus going into Taurus. It is time to move forward. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for telling your friends. Thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel, and I will see you in 1 week. Remember, I love you. Live, love, be.
It's Serious Joy, Joy, Joy.